Hey, it's Ben back for another broadcast. Right as I was setting up, there's I'm in the midst of Midtown Manhattan right now, and shortly after setting up, a helicopter showed up and it's hovering overhead. Second in a row, it's done this. I know sometimes when there's someone that's committed some kind of criminal act or something, and the police are searching for them, the helicopters will hover and as they're trying to find the suspect or something. But 2 days in a row. But I guess maybe I shouldn't complain when I think about the nations in other parts of the world that are at war right now, where they have all kinds of um, missiles flying and bombs falling and so on. And I definitely, I guess I could say my heart goes out to those individuals, yeah, who are experiencing this reality at this time. But anyway, uh, I put together another article, which I'm about to post. If you're hearing the recording of this broadcast, it's already on my blog. But for those who are hearing it live, it's not yet there. But it's called Worthy and Deserving of Love. Because for a lot of people, there's this experience of inadequacy, sense of unworthiness, maybe even being defective or unlovable. And again, many people have experienced that. I have at points in my life, and it's actually fairly common and stuff. One thing I do want to say too, as I go into this, is that on one hand, I'd prefer not to look at my notes or read or anything while I'm on camera, but on the other, I'm covering such enormous amount of material. Unlike two people whose work I admire greatly, Esther Perel and Helen Fisher, I notice on a lot of their whatever it is, TED Talks or interviews, that they're covering like a kind of a limited range of material within a certain sphere. And whereas that I'm addressing so many areas, and because the articles I'm writing are so in depth and there's just so much content packed in there, it's more than I can possibly remember and keep in mind, especially when I'm sitting in front of a camera and I have that deer in the headlights phenomena. May not be apparent, but that's what how I feel at times. But anyway, I'll refer to my notes at times and maybe read a few sections here and there as I go. And let's see how quickly I could bang through this. So, so for many, feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness, well, they distort the lens through which we perceive ourselves and other people. And it's this haunting echo that persists. It's like this inner voice or pervasive feeling. It says that somehow we are inherently flawed. And this inner narrative is especially magnified for those of us with anxious attachment styles. And attachment theory, it breaks it down into three primary categories. Anxious, those of us who say we would be fearful of abandonment. The more secure is those who feel a sense of comfort and more of a trust that even if a relationship didn't work out, there's that ultimate faith that, hey, I'm going to meet that special someone and ultimately things will work out in my favor. And then there's the more avoidant attachment style, which tends to be individuals who have their walls up, these barriers, and who are uncomfortable with intimacy, that have a hard time letting people get close to them. And the unfortunate reality for those with anxious attachment styles is that they tend to gravitate towards those individuals with the more avoidant style of attachment. And so it becomes like it could be pretty torturous, to say the least. You're wanting that connection, and yet you're um, you end up, as I said, forming attachments to people who have their walls up. And so, anyway, um, so this emotional wound of, this profound sense of being unworthy, unlovable, defective, it's like a critical inner voice that incessantly conveys that we're neither worthy or deserving of love. It resides deep within us. So instead of experiencing an intrinsic sense of goodness and our undeniable right to love and be loved, we experience the world through this filter. It's all these feelings and imagery and this like negating internal voice, even bodily sensations that perpetually tell us that we're not okay, that there's something inherently wrong with us. And and consequently, many of us, like, we feel compelled to invest our time and energy and effort in this desperate attempt to secure love and validation. And we experience like this void of, this absence of self love and appreciation. Um, it's not fun, but moving right along. So, where does this come from? A lot of times, feelings of unworthiness or inadequacy, I mean, it can develop for a number of reasons. There are a number of factors. There's the relational dynamics with our parents, um, hurtful interactions with their peers as we're growing up, societal pressures. Um, but a great deal of it has to do with the harsh or hurtful words and actions of our parents, and the attitudes that they direct towards us. Um, but when we hold on to the imprints of these past painful experiences, whether they stem from childhood abuses or hurtful words and actions, could even be from our current and former romantic partners, rejections, breakups, being ghosted. It can reinforce our beliefs and feelings of being unworthy, defective, unlovable, inadequate, all these things. And so that can create a self-perpetuating dynamic, making making it challenging for us to recognize and um, embrace people who could actually love us. And a lot of times when we go through the experiences and tendencies, they're so painful that we tend to shut down or numb ourselves to these feelings. But when that happens, um, we internalize these hurtful events and all the emotions attached to them, and so all that emotion, it just gets pushed down into our bodies. And whether people are conscious or not, other people tend to pick up on the vibe that we emanate, and much of that vibe comes from these experiences and the emotions that we've internalized. And so often people, even if it's not intentional, they respond or they react to us according to the vibe that we're giving off. And so it tends to reinforce sometimes their actions, or the way um, they would respond to us can reinforce our sense of unworthiness. Now, often there's we have this profound need for love and acceptance, but when you have family and friends and intimate partners, and um, maybe um, times when maybe they turn away from us, and it leaves us feeling these profound feelings of inadequacy, and there's these fears of rejection, and and that contributes to our fears of abandonment. But in our attempt to wanting to be loved and accepted, sometimes we tend to deny or disown parts of ourselves. It's like, um, we're afraid that if we um, express what we're truly thinking or feeling or what it is we truly want or sides of ourselves that some aspects of ourselves that we feel may not be accepted or appreciated, where this love or liking is conditional. Um, Again, there's either the disapproval or the rejection or whatever kind of uh, unapproving emotional response. And so, because of that, sometimes we tend to sideline our genuine feelings, our experiences, like what we're truly thinking. And so, in doing that, um, it's like we're operating with this belief that if we genuinely express ourselves in relationship, that there's the risk that we're going to be rejected, and that the other person's just going to turn their back on us. But and so when that happens, we present this facade. It's like we're not able to genuinely relate to our partners or the people in our lives because of our own fear, anxieties around being abandoned or something. So we deny or we suppress parts of ourselves. Um, but it prevents us from being truly honest about who we truly are and how we feel. And so in doing so, it's like we're obstructing the other person's ability to truly see and understand us and to be our genuine selves. And and this dishonesty um, perpetrates our underlying feelings. It compounds the issue because it's perpetrating our genuine feelings of unworthiness, and it raises doubts about our lovability. And especially when we remain in these relationships that force us into these inauthentic molds. So there's this dichotomy between our true self and our false self. So, like from an early age, many of us are conditioned to segregate our feelings and our emotions, and we're taught to now split off parts of ourselves that have been deemed unacceptable by our caregivers. Often that's where it starts, but that dynamic often perpetuates even into our adult relationships. And and it's not just related to, say, anger. I mean, it could be related to a whole spectrum of our feelings. So when we're constantly having to push these feelings aside, it's like we're compromising our own ability to recognize and understand our own internal processes, our own inner processes of feeling, but also it makes it difficult for us to intuit or sense other people's internal processes, which is a valuable source of information that we need to better understand not only ourselves, but other people with whom we interact. So, this act of compartmentalizing our emotions and experiences, again, it creates this dichotomy between our false self and um, our true self. So, over time, some of us, we become, because we have so denied aspects of ourself, we become so identified with this facade of what we've constructed, what we come to believe ourselves to be, and we may not even realize that we're wearing a mask. um, Again, a lot of this is driven by our fears of abandonment, and moving right along. So much to cover here. So I think a lot of what's important here is learning to bring more of ourselves um, into the present moment. We tend to contract around our emotional responses to experiences that make us feel fearful, anxious, those that um, experiences that have left us feeling hurt and traumatized. And so many of us, what happens is parts of us remain in this fearful, contracted state. It's like we shrink in response to these traumas and distressing life experiences. So, in order to heal, we need to face these issues head on. And in order to bring ourselves more into the moment, and also to be able to feel our authentic emotional responses, and to bring our full awareness to what we're feeling. And as I say in so many other videos and articles that I've written, filmed, it's just bring our awareness to what we're feeling, drop into those feelings and sensations, breathing into them. And we do so, that helps us to process our emotional responses to whatever situation or interaction that we're dealing with, to gain insight, to gain understanding. It gives us clarity, understanding as to how to proceed. And another unfortunate consequence of when we disconnect emotionally, and when we hold these this wounding, we're coming from this sense of being unlovable or defective or unworthy in some way, is that we tend to interpret other people's reactions through this filter of unworthiness or being unlovable. And so when people say or do things, and it could be some kind of innocuous comment, or um, maybe they were a little insensitive or something, or they just weren't, maybe they didn't acknowledge us or something we said, or they weren't there for us when we needed them. But we can easily interpret that through this filter of unworthiness. And maybe we tell ourselves stories, and we construct this meaning or whatever. And unfortunately, for many of us, it could easily become this closed loop system as we tell ourselves these stories, and it just further reinforces our sense of unworthiness. And so it's important for us to be able to gain the understanding of our cognitive processes, so that when we do find ourselves triggered by somebody's words and actions, we're able to take a step back, bring that person, that situation into our awareness by breathing into the feelings and bodily sensations. And we're able to work through these feelings. What I find that happens is we gain a lot of insight. Maybe we see the other person or the situation more objectively. And as that happens, it's instead of personalizing um, the what happened, what occurred in that moment, we're better able to, again, understand what's going on and put things in perspective. Um, the fact that a lot of us, we can easily get caught up in these scenarios that we concoct in our heads, and when that happens, we fail to reach out, we fail to initiate a dialogue, to to actually speak with whether it's a friend or um, maybe a romantic partner or family member, and actually express um, our feelings about what happened, and engage them in dialogue, and therefore gain more understanding, and which would, in a sense, help us to bridge the gaps and deepen our understanding, and actually help us to be a little more understanding and more considerate of one another. Um, Another thing, that when we carry this emotional wounding that stems from feelings of being unworthy, unlovable, or defective, is that whenever we strive to do or accomplish anything in our lives, like we all have these dreams, aspirations of what we want to accomplish. Invariably, as we do so and as we extend beyond our comfort zone, we're going to encounter all kinds of internal resistance, whether, internal resistance and also circumstances that are not necessarily going to work in our favor. It's just part of life. But when that does so, it's normal. It's going to evoke a lot of these feelings, a lot of um, the emotions and the internal dialogue that reinforces our sense of unworthiness. Um, our And as we're able to be present with those feelings, breathe into them, work through them, and continue to strive to accomplish that which is we want to do or achieve or whatever. As we do that, that's going to help us to um, work through that internal resistance, but it's also going to give us additional insight and help to provide this or get in touch with this inner strength that's going to help to carry us forward. And as we continue to do that, that's going to we're going to find it easier to go ahead and move through our internal resistance and accomplish the things that we need to get done. And as we do that, that's going to um, build or help us to develop this growing sense of efficacy. And so, again, as we move beyond our zone of familiarity, if I pronounce that right, that's going to it's going to trigger these emotional responses within us. But we need to just stay very present anytime these emotional responses are evoked. Breathe into them as we work through them. That's going to help to dissolve a lot of the internal resistance, and that's going to make it easier to move forward. Um, Let me check in with my notes. I want to see where I am here. I'm going to, I go much more into detail in the article that I'm posting here. And again, there's so much that I include in these articles. There, enormous amount of information that I condense into each of these articles, and so I encourage you to actually click on the link below that I'll post below the video. And you can also subscribe if you like, and you could have my articles, latest articles and videos delivered right to your inbox. And by the way, if you're finding value and you enjoy what you're hearing here, be sure, if you're watching on YouTube, click like, feel free to share this video or any articles I post. And you could also subscribe to my YouTube channel. So feelings of being unworthy, defective, undeserving of love, and they can create enormous barriers that impede our ability to love and to be loved, to establish meaningful connections. And the potential for love is all around us. I mean, maybe some of us find ourselves in challenging environments, where people tend to be a little more walled off. But I remember, as I think back to years ago in times past when I was dealing with a lot of my own emotional wounding, and in those years, I was forming attachments to women who themselves were quite wounded and that were, in many respects, disinterested or unavailable and could be quite hurtful in some instances. And yet there were others who showed interest in me, and yet I just, wasn't getting it. I, had this, intense attachment to someone else who, was quite the opposite. And but as I went over time, as I continued to progress in my my own journey of healing, it's like those unhealthy attachments dissolved, and it's like a lot of the barriers um, also began to come down. And as that happened, I found it just much easier to connect. It was like it felt as though I was developing this more magnetic presence, and I was drawing more attention, and and it just became much easier um, to attract into my life on a number of levels, friends, our intimate companions, and but um, but the fact that when we carry this emotional wounding and we feel unworthy or undeserving of love, that it creates these barriers that um, it's like the residue of past deeply wounding experiences and all those highly charged emotions of hurt and rejection and other painful emotions, well, they remain trapped within our bodies, and they can leave us numb and disconnected, and they create this blindness, this perceptual gap, which, you know, that's what I was describing that I was experiencing in years past. And it renders us oblivious to our own actions, but it could also, um, we don't recognize a lot of the opportunities when they're, say, when there's somebody is who could be a really nurturing and loving partner, or experiences that can help us to heal and grow. And so, even when the potential for love exists, um, recognizing and being receptive to it can be quite challenging. So, the difficulty arises because we end up, when we carry this emotional wounding, we perceive the world through a filter that's shaped by past painful experiences and all the unprocessed emotions that are held within our body. It's really important, though, that for us to be in relationships, and even if not necessarily a romantic relationship, just the fact that we're opening up and we're engaging, and to whatever extent we can, that we're in relationships with others, because there's as we're in relationships, others reflect back to us, mirror back to us, like where we are developmentally. They reflect back to us like our own emotional wounding. And so these interactions that we have, even if they can be sometimes a little stressful or hurtful, they put us in touch with aspects of ourselves that are wounded, that um, we need to get in touch with these parts of ourselves to feel our emotional responses and to be able to work through them in order to facilitate the healing. Um, it's important for us to be able to embrace our losses when they do occur. I know a lot of people, especially if we have these abandonment wounds, which, if there's a sense of um, unworthiness, unlovability, a lot of that is linked to these profoundly deep wounds of abandonment. And we can be so fearful of being abandoned, and so one of the things we do is that we try to control the other person, or the relationship, to prevent from being abandoned, um, are the way we behave, our actions, the things that we say and we do, in hopes that that person is not going to abandon us. But yeah, even even when we are taking the steps, we're healing and evolving, it's it's a fact of life that people do leave. Whether they, sometimes we just grow in different directions, or we change. That people who are a part of our life, they change in many ways. Sometimes we just grow apart. We could be in a romantic relationship, and as we go in different directions, sometimes we no longer have as much in common. Maybe that person that we formed a strong attachment to. Maybe they fall in love with someone else. We're seeing that person ghost us, or they just break off the relationship, all kinds of things. And so we will experience losses, even with friends. It's times when people that friends move away, and all of us at some point will inevitably um, leave the planet. So I don't remember who said it, but there's the quote: "You are the only one that you will never lose or leave." So loss is a part of life. But again, when we experience these losses, the more that we can be present with our own authentic emotional responses, fully open up to what we're feeling, dive into the depths of these feelings, breathing into them. And it helps us to process or digest these losses. And doing so helps us to gracefully let go. And instead of trying so much to hold on and control the outcome, we're better able to allow people and our relationships and life itself to flow. And so continuing here, I think some of this stuff I've already covered. And again, I'd encourage you to actually read the article because it goes much more in depth. So one of the things that happens, though, is that as we go through our process of healing, all the steps that we do to heal our wounds of abandonment and, that sense of defectiveness or being unworthy or unlovable. And as we do that, we come to this place where we do feel more worthy and deserving, and a lot of things do start working better for us in life. It's people show us are more open and more responsive to us. They're more engaging, and so we often you know there's more opportunities as far as our career, and we advance in our career and more social opportunities. We make more friends, and more people want to be around us and invite us to get together with them and go out and do things and stuff. And but some of us make the mistake of thinking that because we've healed this profound, deep sense of unworthiness, maybe as we're moving along, we meet or we connect with someone along the way, and there's this could be this we feel this connection to an individual, and there could even be these like really intense and at times even overwhelming feelings of desire, and maybe a sense of like, wow, there's with this connection, somehow we're just meant to be together. And and the problem is that when those feelings are not reciprocated, often what happens is it can throw us back into that these feelings of unworthiness again, and then we can doubt that we've made any progress. And but it's important to understand that not everybody's going to love us. Not everyone's going to find us attractive. Maybe that other individual has their own sense of what they find attractive. The kind of individual and with certain qualities or maybe even certain physical features. Maybe they just don't resonate with us, at least not on a romantic level. And and so again, if there's that lack of reciprocation and it's triggering us emotionally, we need to be able to be present and to experience our authentic feeling, our emotional responses, and work through that. As we process that, that too can become a profound opportunity for growth. Going back over the years, especially, I would say in my mid-20s when that began to really surface, this profound sense of unworthiness or feeling that I was somehow inherently defective or unlovable. And when that began to surface, and partly because of, I think a lot of it had to do with early childhood and adolescent trauma, and then it was reinforced by subsequent experience of either abandonment or relationships that just weren't working, and it just evoked enormous amounts of emotional pain. But as that happened, I just taught myself to instinctively dive into these emotions, fully open up to them, breathing softly and deeply. And as I began to work through these emotions and work with, uh, doing a lot of deep tissue body work, working with some powerfully gifted healers, going on the vision quest, as I've described before, a traditional Native American practice where we go to fast for the 4 days and nights with no food and water. And so as I continue to take these steps to heal, it's more and more of that, these deep emotional wounding, more and more of that healed. And so that deep underlying sense of being unworthy or unlovable or defective, it's like that diminished. It's like all those highly charged emotions I held in my body, it created this filter through before I was seeing other people. That was the interface through which I would engage in my, whether it be, um, with friends or a romantic partner, or just how I would see and perceive the world around me. But it's like that. It's like that filter was dissolving. It was becoming more and more transparent. As that happened, I began to experience this sense of warmth or emanation from within. I began to experience this lightness of being. And with that, there was just more synchronicities, and I was connecting more. Relationships became deeper, more meaningful, more fulfilling. And I found that as I went through this, as I evolved, as I went through this evolution, that as I would work with other people, they too would experience many of these same changes. So it's it can be very intense work to do. It's not necessarily easy, um, but when we commit ourselves and we take the steps on a daily basis, working with our emotional responses and making use of the therapeutic interventions like I described, we can cycle through, work through these profoundly um, painful emotions that we hold in our bodies. We work through them, and it builds this whole new foundation. And with that, our relationships improve. We become more present in our bodies. We become more the embodiment of our authentic selves. And as we do that, we naturally attract people into our lives with whom we truly resonate. So, yeah, a lot to think about here. Again, I go much more into depth in the article. I will post the link below the article or below the video. So be sure to go read the article itself and reach out to me if I can be of assistance. Because if you're struggling with this same kind of, these wounds of abandonment, the profound, deep inner sense of being defective or unworthy or unlovable, I find that's, from my standpoint, it's very easy to work with. And I've seen a lot of people go through the healing transformation and attract and form much healthier, more meaningful, more loving connections. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. Bye for now.